Hi, good evening. Good evening. Hi, nice to see you.
Good
Okay.
evening.
Okay. Hi, Michael. Michael, is that you, Michael?
Yes, hi.
Hi, nice to see you, Michael. Long time no see. My good friend.
We
Right?
just got our power
sporting
back
a
on, but
beard now,
there
huh?
was a windstorm.
Sporting a
There
beard
was a
now, huh?
windstorm. A
Oh,
little bit.
nice. I like that. Very handsome.
Thank-
Yeah, very good. Wow. Beautiful. All right. Okay, here we go. All right. So interesting, right? What we were talking about yesterday regarding this, sleeping positions, the bed. So, the truth is, it's right in the Mishnah Berurah, this whole thing. The Mishnah Berurah brings down this whole thing. And the Mishnah Berurah says there's many poskim who say like the Zohar. As we said, right? So he says, therefore, it's a machloket basically, So that's why, if you have a hard time doing this way, do like the Zohar, you'll be all right, because it's difficult for us sometimes, to follow, this halacha in one way only. You know what I mean? So that's why we, yeah. Pretty much that's the story.
The question you mentioned the Zohar. What's
Yeah.
the difference between the Zohar and the Tikkunei?
Oh boy. So you know what it is? The Zohar has many parts. There's many sections. By the way, it's a huge work, the Zohar. Like in today's books, we're talking like 20 volumes, it's huge. So, Tikkunei Zohar is one of the sections of the Zohar. It's one of the volumes called Tikkunei Zohar. Why is it called Tikkunei? Because what happened was that there was, new things that were included later on, like tikkun means to fix, like they fixed up some things there. You understand? That's what it means, So it's like it's a fix-up job. That's something like that, right? That's what it means.
Makes sense because they
Yeah.
show some contradiction in
Yeah.
something referencing it. It says
Oh.
in the Zohar it's like this, but in the Tikkunei Zohar it's like this.
That's very interesting. Okay.
So
Right.
it's
So
like-
tikkunei means to fix, to fix it up. That's what it means.
So you take the opinion on the Tikkunei Zohar, right?
Not always, you have to see what it is. I'm not really sure what you're talking about, but there's no general rule like that. There's no rules. There's no rules like that. It's all wisdom, It's like, in other words, Zohar is not really a halachic work. You know what I mean? It's like wisdom. It's chassidut. It's piety. Whatever. It's not really. There are some halachot there brought down. You know what I mean? Like in between. But it's mostly Kabbalah there, basically. Like things you can't even understand. Like you don't know what's going on there. Okay, so anyway, right, getting back to our issue here, as we said, right, so we have what to rely on, the Zohar, the Bavli, whatever is right, do it either way, be happy, sleep good, make sure you get a good night's sleep, and wake up on time also. That's the most important thing. Okay, very good. So we'll move on to the next halacha, which is Vav, right? Are we moving to Vav now?
Vav in the two?
Yeah, where do we stop? Where do we?
Last time we did Shulchan Aruch on the Vav.
We did Shulchan Aruch
but in
Vav. So we gotta go to Zion now.
Zion, I only know that Zion's in the Bet Yosef, where it says very.
Yes, I see that. ולעניין מטיל מים לפי מה שכתב רש"י.
Yes.
Right? That, yeah, okay. So you got that Bet Yosef, Yitzhak. Show him where it is.
Right. It's in page Tedvav. You see in the bottom where it says Zion. Vilenian Matil. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so saying like this, right? ולעניין מטיל מים. It says regarding, using the bathroom, urination, right? That's what it means. לפי מה שכתב רש"י, according to what Rashi wrote, שהטעם שלא יפנה מזרח ומערב, he said the reason why you shouldn't urinate from east to west, הוא כדי שלא יהיה פרעונו שלפניו או שלאחוריו. Why? Because we don't want either in your front or in your back, the tzad Yerushalayim, to go towards Jerusalem. Like, even though in the end, right, we didn't paskin like that. We paskin like the other opinion, which said the reason was the Shekhinah. Right? But according to Rashi, this was the reasoning. Right? The matil mayim upanav letzad mizrach. So he says, therefore, according to that, if you're facing the east, that would be okay, and urinating. Why? Because you're not going towards Jerusalem, you're going the other side. So according to Rashi, west would be a problem, but east would be okay, depending on where you are, right? Depending on what's your location. What's your 1040, as they say, right? The truckers. Okay, so פניו לצד מזרח, שמחר שאינו צריך לפרוע אלא לפניו הרי אין פירעונו לצד ירושלים. So therefore he's not going toward Jerusalem. וכן נראה מדגרסינא בירושלמי. So it says also comes up in Yerushalmi like that. Gemara Yerushalmi. Tane, right, it says over there, Tane, it says in Yerushalmi, המסיח את רגליו, if a person urinates, לא ייתן פניו למזרח ולאחוריו למערב. Don't put your front to the east and your back towards the west. That's what we don't want. Right? Mashma comes out from there, right? It's implied there. The masich et raglav hu the asur. So it's only asur when you're urinating. Why? Because when you're urinating, you're doing towards your front. Right? So that side is asur. That's the reason why. But if you turn around to the west, you're good because you're not going towards the mikdash. That's just the opposite, right? You're going away from mikdash. Right? Okay. So he says, you see from there, the mashma Yerushalmi, that in Yerushalmi it's mashma, the masichet aglav leachorav lemarav, that if you're urinating and your back is towards the west, dafka hu de asur, that's only when it's forbidden. So that seems like Rashi, right? Same thing as Rashi. Ha panav kilape marav, but if your front is towards the west, share it's mutar ve'im ita dematil ma'im have ifcha defanav, and if it was true, if it would be true that urination, right, is going to be the opposite. Also, in other words, your front, klape marav, your front is going to be towards the west. Asur, it's going to be forbidden. The achorav marav shareh, and the back towards the west is permitted. Din matil mayim behedya. So then it really should have taught the halacha of urination by itself. In other words, it's a separate section. It has nothing to do with the other section, which is defecation. Excuse my language, right? They're not the same. So therefore, it should have been taught separately. That's what he says. Okay, so he's analyzing this whole thing, right? So he says, right, so כלפי מערב אסור, ואחריו למערב שרת. הווה למיתנא דין מטיל מים בידיה, דלא שמינא מדין מסיח את רגליו, because we don't learn that from urination. ונראה לי דיושלמי הכי. So he says, it seems to me that דיושלמי הכי כמון. This is what he needs to say. לא מבעיה דלא ייתן פניו למערב. So I don't need to tell you that don't put your face towards the west. Why? Since you're opening up in your front to tefach, pshita, it's pashut, the asur. For sure, it's asur. Even what it means to say that even the back, they don't megale ela tefach. He's only exposing one tefach, as we said, right? This is the proportions. Asur l'ten ma'arav. You cannot put it towards the west. So it comes out from there. The matil maim lo yiten panav le'ma'arav. So therefore, right, if a person is urinating, don't go towards the west. But towards the east, it's mutar. So it's according to this, beisha. What about a woman, right? As we said, right? She only has towards her back. There's nothing in the front, right? That's what we said. So it says, since we hold that she doesn't really open up the front at all, she doesn't need to at all. So he says, therefore, even if she's just urinating, we should allow bifanea in her front when it's going towards the west. Why? Because there's nothing open there, right? It's all closed. So he says, you know what? It's possible to say that even though that's the case, what we just said is true, but the rabbis didn't want to make like differentiation like that. In other words, they wanted to make a standard law for everybody. So this way, nobody feels discrimination. Whatever, right? Whatever you want to call it, right? They didn't make separation between man and woman. According to Rambam, he says, he said it differently, right? That since the hechal, the sanctuary, right, the temple, is in the west, don't go towards the west, right? And also not towards the east. Why? You know why? Because it's corresponding to the west. So in other words, really, these two directions are the same. There is a concept like this in halakha, that the Shekhinah is one side, and therefore the other side also is the same, corresponding to that side, right? So in other words, if the Shekhinah is in the west, the east is also the same. That's what he's trying to say. It's all like one, right? It's all one row. It's one line, That's the idea. Yeah. So he says from there, it seems like the reason is not מפני שהפיל עונו למערב. Not because he's urinating right towards the west, אלא מפני שהוא נפנה במערב. I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. It's not because the nakedness is over there, right? It's exposure. It's because he's actually urinating that way. Or the other direction, right? Opposite of that. If he's there, so it says, according to this, it's clear that you shouldn't separate between man and woman. In other words, it should be the same halakha for everybody. So what does that mean? That if he urinates, even though his front is going towards the west, it's allowed. He also wrote this, Sham, over there, so he says like this, right? If you urinate from the tzofim and further in, so what is tzofim? Tzofim is a certain place which is like close to Jerusalem. So once you get that close, the halakha already changes, becomes more stringent. You know what I mean? So that's what he's trying to say. So what happens is, right, he's telling you that if he's doing it from that point and inward towards the temple, yeshev ufanav klapei hakodesh, right? Okay, so he should sit, right, and his face should go towards the holy, or yisalek hakodesh letzadin, or tilt away the holy to the sides. So therefore, you see from there, he says that it's written explicitly that you're allowed to urinate and your face is towards the marav, towards the west. That even when you're close to the temple, it's still allowed. All the more so if you're outside of that area, right? If you're further away. Not what you said, that he should sit and his face is going towards the Kodesh, the holy. It's telling you like even a bigger novel idea, bigger chidush. That even though in the front he opens up 2 tefach, he can turn towards the holy, even though he's innermost, he's closer to the temple, right? That point. So it says, but now it tells you it's more plausible to say like this. He's entertaining all kinds of ideas, right? How to learn this properly. So it says, you know what? It seems like the Rambam, more probable to say, more plausible to say that the Rambam is not really concerned with the urination, or defecation. What he really doesn't want, don't turn your back towards the holy. That's not respectful. And therefore, once you get to the innermost point, right inside the tzofim, you got to turn towards the holy, right? So meaning what? I don't really care about what you're doing with your genitals. That's not the issue. The issue is don't turn away from the temple.
Wait, but
So-
we usually walking, like we do it all the time.
Oh,
Not even doing the,
good question. Okay, yeah, it's a good question. I hear that. Let's just read on for a second, right? And we'll get back to that. So I don't really know what the answer is to that. You can't really answer right now. So by the way, there's a general rule, like I always tell my students, don't ask questions in the middle of the sentence. Let's first finish the whole it. You know why? Because most of the questions will be answered, as we read on. You know what I mean? So if you stop and ask a question, like you won't have any answer. There's no way to answer it because you haven't completed it yet. Okay, so but outside tzofim, but when you're outside that area, right? You're not in the close vicinity of the temple, so then it's allowed to do any way you want. Doesn't matter whether you turn your back or you don't turn your back. It's all allowed. Right? It says that also seems to be the opinion of the Torah. Because he left out the din of urination. So it seems like it's allowed in any case. And even though you really should have written like this, don't urinate if you're right, if you're in between, if you're innermost, if you're more in than that place. But so what should you do? Don't turn away from the temple, but turn towards the temple. Oh, God. Right? So it says, since the whole din is not it's not inclusive. Therefore, the rabbi didn't write it. So Gasina Yerushalmi says there's a Girsa in Yerushalmi it's written in Yerushalmi like this. Tane hamatil mayim harezeh hofech panav letzafon. So over there in Yerushalmi it says, if a person is urinating, he should turn towards the north. Yeah. But if he's doing defecation, then he should go towards the south. So it seems to me that so this seems to be like Rashi, not like what we just said in the Rambam. That what? For Rashi, the issue is the defecation itself, not turning away or turning towards. So he says he's giving honor to the right side, and he's urinating. Why is that? Because in front of him he opens up two tefach. Right? But if he turns towards the north, which is the left side, the Masichat Aglav, and regarding defecation, you don't have to open up anything in front of you. Then turn towards the south, which is the right side. That's called Yamin. It's called right. Well, Rambam, the Lachaish the Pirua, but it says according to Rambam that is not concerned about defecation or urination. It's not the issue. If Shar the Had Tana Chaish the Pirua, that it says it seems like this Tana is really concerned about defecation and urination. But we don't hold like this Tana, according to Rambam. We don't pass it like that. Or alternatively, I can tell you, Mefaresh, that Rambam will explain the high Tana Cholek Kavod the small. That this Tana is more giving more honor to the left, right? Which meaning what? That's the north. He's giving more kavod to the north, right? Like we find like we find in the end of the tefillah. Oh, right. So what happens over there? When you end the tefillah, you go towards the north first. Right? That whole thing. So it says because of this, so there you can urinate even because it's not so disgusting, like as the other one. So therefore he can turn towards the north. And he's gonna when it comes to defecation, which is more disgusting, then he goes towards the south. The poskim look what it says, right? The poskim didn't bring this Yerushalmi. So what does that mean? They probably hold, right, that we don't paskin like that. This Yerushalmi, right? Mishum the kevan the Gemara didan. Since in our Gemara Katanestama the Tzafon B'Darom, it says right north and south. Share, it's allowed to do north and south. That's what the Gemara says. Probably mashma the bechol gavna share. It's mashma. It implies that it's allowed in any case. So therefore, he turns to any direction that he wants. Mishtehen from either one, right? In other words, there's no preference. Umil, it goes on, right? It says, however, that's only when you're, as we said, right? This only applies when you're in an open field. All this, right? All this story here. In a place where there's walls around you, partitions, right? Like a bathroom, like in the house. And we're not really particular about these things. We don't care. So says this rabbi, right? He calls him, by the way, he calls him Rabbi Gadol. You see what it says? Rabbi Gadol. Why does he call him Gadol? This was his Rebbe. This was one of his Rebbes, so he gives him kavod. Mari Avuhav was one of the Rebbes of Maran. Okay, so he says, right, Mari Avuhav, he was a Spanish rabbi, this guy, from Spain. Okay, so he says, right, that the place where there's mechitzot, where there's walls, like a bathroom, as we said, right? He wants to say that the partitions are not far from one another, like a big courtyard. That's what he says, right? Which is a little bit wondrous. Like, what is he talking about? Like, what difference does it make whether they're close or not? The partitions. What difference does that make? So he says, so Maran says, it seems like he's analyzing his words here, right? That which Rabbeinu said, the tour. They were talking about like a home bathroom, right? That's talking about what? When the mechitzot are close to each other. In other words, it's not a big room. Okay, what do I really care about that? Right? What do I care about the size? Right? Do me a debate by to the end of that dick. Then we're not particular about but if the partitions are far apart, like a big courtyard, right? like a big backyard, whatever, right? Then you got to be careful. So he says, you know what? Doesn't make sense, right? In other words, what's the logic of that? As I said, right, the logic is really hard to understand.
You see your showing?
Yeah, I see what you mean. There is something like that. So therefore, the rule is like this: whatever you have mechitzot, even though they're far apart from each other, it's a big room, right? Huge room, right? Sharetz, muta. So Maran over here doesn't agree with Mahari Abuhab, even though he was Rebbe, right? It happens, sometimes you have to argue on your Rebbe. Hadekama Kegon Betakise, right? That was talking about Betakise B'bayit. Tama, why are you saying the house? Kayahiv Mishum, he's giving you a reason that he says the house. Right? What does that mean? Mishum Dechol Sheyesh Bo Mechitzot, because wherever you have Mechitzot, partitions, Damela Bayit, it's like a house, so there's no problem. V'achi Mashma Mimash Katav Davka, that's how it's implied, what she wrote. When he goes to a place which is open, there's no mechitzot there whatsoever, no partitions. Like in the field, right? Because if it was really something which has partitions, even though they're far apart, quite far apart, that's not called open place, right? What difference does it make? They're far apart. That's what comes out in Yerushalmi. The Sot Brachot over there, in end of Brachot, Rabbi Akiva oser b'chol makom. So it says over there, Rabbi Akiva is forbidding in every place, right? We already saw this before, right? Rabbi Akiva holds all over the world. You can't do this, right? Wherever you may be, right? Argentina, South America, North America, Canada, wherever you may, it doesn't make any difference where you are. The whole world is asur, right? But that means what? A place where there's no walls. That's what he meant to say, right? An open place. Right? It doesn't matter where you are. The Katav Tosfot wrote this, the Arosh and Rosh also, right? The Katav Alav Arosh, Rosh wrote regarding this. So he says, our bathrooms, that we have always walls. By us, everything is walled in. Right? And the Akpid. So he says, there's no kfedah regarding these things, right? We're not concerned about these things. There's no, he didn't make a differentiation where they're far apart or close together. What difference does it make? Right? The Rashba also wrote over there explicitly. There's no wall there. It's so mashma that bilvad, right? Even like in a valley, just as a wall, that's good enough. Even if you're outdoors.
There's a walled city, and you're in the forest.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
considered there is a wall, but it's far apart, right?
Right. So I think that would not help you. There's a walled city. That's not going to help you. Because you're not in a walled place. You yourself are not in a walled place.
If you don't see it, it is.
What are you talking about? That you're inside the city or outside the city?
No, you're in the city.
You're in the city.
It's a big city, so you don't see the walls.
Oh.
Then you're outside.
I see what you mean. Yeah. That's an interesting thing. I would say probably, but it's not going to change it. The halakha. This is what you're saying, and the reason is because those walls are not really where you are. You are not. I have to say it in the right way. To make you understand. Those walls are meant to be a wall for the city, right? But they're not a wall to your, they're not bathroom walls. You know what I mean? In other words, where you are going, doing your thing, those walls are not covering you, what you're doing. I don't know.
About a yard, like a backyard.
Yeah. But it's talking about backyard with walls, right? Yeah.
Right, but it's not also for that purpose though, the backyard walls.
Right, but so that's the thing, so Mari Avuhav, now the logic seems to start to be understood, right? According to what we're discussing, there's some logic to it, but
so it's not
right. But anyway, right? It seems like it's okay, man. The truth is, your question is not so simple, So yeah. I'm not going to be so quick to answer that question, but I don't know. I have to think about it. Gotta think about that one. Okay, that's a good question. A very interesting question. Okay, so. It says like this, right? So also it says in the right. Okay, Rabbeinu עצמו כתב ברמזים. Rabbeinu said also the Tur wrote in this. כלשון הזה, like this language, this is language of the Tur. ולא יפנה לצד מזרח, don't go towards the east or marav or to the west. That's only in the field. There's no partitions. But if it's something like bathroom in your house, there's no kfidah, there's no problem. He also said, right, it's only in the field the problem. Where there's no walls there. But the place where you have walls, even though they're very far apart, so there it becomes like a house, so there's no problem. So, like, again, right, I'm thinking about your question, so it seems to me in my mind, just like as a first thought, that it's not going to help you because, what it is, those walls are not coming to be like to cover your action that you're doing when you're in the bathroom. That's not what it's meant for. But when you're going into like a field, which is like covered, like walled in, so it's basically covering you. That's because you're there. You know what I mean? Like that's in other words, it's like a private domain, which is so you're in a private domain. You know what? There's a rule like this, by the way, that when you have like 4 walls around you, okay, it makes it into a private domain.
Right.
So the question is, what about the city, right? Is the city a private domain? So the truth is, in some ways it is. When it's walled in, when it's walled in, it becomes. So what does that mean? You can make an eruv there. You don't need strings because the walls are better than the strings. You know what I mean? So okay, so this is an interesting question. Okay, whatever. So מקום שיש מחיצות אפילו הן מרחקות הרבה, משמע דהווה כבית הכיסא בית ואין להקפיד. נראה שמה שהזכירו פוסקים מחיצות, so it seems to be that what the poskim mentioned, right, מחיצות, the partitions, לאו דווקא במחיצה אחד לצד מערב. It's not talking about just having one wall towards the west. That's not enough. Interesting, right? Because it's covering your western, flank, right? Whatever. So you might think, right, since that wall is covering that direction, which is the problematic direction, even though the other sides are open, so then we shouldn't care, right? It should be fine. One wall should do it, right?
The east is open.
Right. In other words, as long as your direction which is forbidden is being covered, that wall should do the trick. But it's telling you not so, right? So the question is why? Right? So it says, לא האכפת לן מידי, לאחי דייק לשנה דירושלמי, דקתנה, בלבד שלא בכל מקום שאין לו בכותל. Right, so the truth is he's telling, right, that that's really the case. In other words, if that direction is covered, that's good enough. You don't need 4 walls around you. There's no purpose for that. The only thing you need is to cover the direction, which is forbidden. So, okay, so, yeah, so, I see that point, I'm still thinking about your question. Okay, so Uvivad Makom it's a thought breaker. So it says Uvivad Makom she'en bo kotel v'lo katane Makom she'en bo, right? It has to be. It says kotel, 1 wall. Right? Mashma, it's only 1 wall, not 4 walls. That's the language, right? So that implies like that. V'lo katane Makom she'en bo ktalim. Doesn't say ktalim like walls. So then it goes on, right? The Rambam in this place, right? He didn't make the differentiation between a place with a wall and not with a wall. So the question is why, right? So there. It seems like the Rambam holds that which it said, right, in the Yerushalmi, that there's no wall. That's holding like Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef said it's only forbidden in a place where there's no wall, there's no fence. Like it says in Gemara, like in Gemara. But the problem is we don't paskin like him. So therefore, it seems like the Rambam held that we don't paskin like this opinion. This wall thing. The wall, right? Because it seems like the other Tanaim, the other authorities are arguing on that. And even though in Yerushalmi it says, Leha they taught that close to Rabbi Akiva, so you may think it's one opinion. Lav le'mema doesn't mean to say that Rabbi Akiva doesn't mean that Rabbi Akiva holds that way. And if you can tell me Yerushalmi Sabar, Yerushalmi holds Rabbi Akiva Itle Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yosef one opinion. in this thing, even since in our Talmud, mashma de Rabbi Akiva lo savar lek Rabbi Yosef. It's mashma that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yosef are not agreeing with each other, right? So therefore, we go like our Talmud. So what does that mean? We see from there, right? When there's a contradiction between the Bavli and Ushama, you go like the Bavli, right? This is the way it is. You understand that rule, right? You know that, right? It's a general rule. Okay, so that's the way it is. So we go into Rabbi Akiva. The Asar bechol makom, right? He forbade every place. So Rabbi Akiva, according to Rambam, he's saying, right? Lichora holds that even in a place where there's a wall, it's forbidden. Yeah, so interesting, right? He's entertaining this idea here. So there's a little bit of proof for this. No, that the Rabbi, like from the story of Rabbi, Sider Livnei the Mashma. They made those bricks as we said last time, right? The mashma, the makom sheish kotel haba. It's mashma that it implies that there was a wall there, but he still had a problem with that. So it was implied over there that there was walls there. Nevertheless, haya makpid al pi sheish didchot. I'm sorry, 1 second. Yeah, even though even though that there is to push aside this thing, so you may think, right, that the whatever it says, it's mashma like the Tosfot and Rosh, that they were not they were not accustomed, right, to be particular about a bathroom. So look what he's saying in the end, right? Even though the Rambam seems to paskin like, that the wall doesn't make any differentiation, doesn't make any difference whatsoever. He says that the implication of the Talmud is more like the Rosh and Tosfot. So it seems like the here favors that over the Rambam. Interesting. So by the way, what do you learn from here, right? The good thing to understand is that one thing that as we said, right, that when you have the Rif and the Rambam and the Rosh, we go going 2 out of 3, right? 2 out of 3 we go, whoever's 2 out of 3, we go like that, right? Here, there's no Rif, right? Pretty much. So basically, you have the Rosh against the Rambam. So what do you do in a case like that? So it seems like you're saying, right? First of all, Tosfot is with the Rosh, number 1, right? So he's got one more guy with him, but that's not really the clincher. The clincher is that the implication of the Talmud is more like that. So therefore, he says, right, that the halacha, it seems like over here he seems to be favoring the Rosh. So what does that mean? That we are gonna make a differentiation when it comes to walls, right? That's gonna help you. That's the halacha. That's why Pascal. So it seems like we're not going like the Rambam here. That's what he's saying. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. It would still be a problem. It would still be a problem. Okay, it's interesting. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch. We have to check Zayin, right? Zayin. Let's see how it comes out. I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm just a bit confused because yesterday.
I don't blame you. We're all confused. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, because tour that we did yesterday was about in terms like when you're sleeping, like in your bed, it should be facing a certain direction, right?
Right.
And then that bit Yosef was basically like a follow up on that. But now this bit Yosef, which is right after, it's talking about what we just said before about like the bathroom, which direction we're going to. It makes no sense. Is it going out of order?
What does that mean? I'm sorry. Why did he come back to this again? Right.
Yeah,
that's the question.
It makes no sense. Stick like it should be.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. You know what it is? It seems like he wanted to analyze this. Like there was more analysis that he had to do. So he went like at length. And dealt with it. More comprehensively.
Couldn't have done that beforehand.
Yeah, it probably what it was. It just came to him. Like later on. So he just added it.
It's like I forgot and I forgot.
Yeah, kind of like he kind of like It seems like, in other words, the first section was not enough to really clarify the whole idea. What wasn't enough? It wasn't. In other words, this whole thing, with the machloket between the Rambam and the Rosh, we didn't really know that there was a machloket like that. So this now it comes up, but there is a machloket. Okay, so anyway, let's see what the Shulchan Aruch says, right? Probably going to be like the Rosh, right? I would imagine. Let's see what it says. Maybe I'm mistaken. So it says, right? Amatil mayim min hatzofim v'lifnim. So first of all, right, it's only when you're inside the tzofim, right, which we said, right, is very close to the temple. You know what it means? So it says in parentheses, right? What does that mean? Makom shecholim lirot misham harabait. It means you can see the Temple Mount from there. Once you get close enough, you can see the Temple Mount. You know what that means, right? You see that dome, right? The Muslim dome, right? Dome of the Rock. Once you see that, you're close enough. You got it? Even though it's very depressing to look at it, but right, what can you do? There was one guy, when I was doing a time over here in Queens, there was one guy, Rabbi Alkabas, who lives over here in the neighborhood, in Main Street. So he used to tell me, he says, every time I see that dome, it's like a pimple, that person has on his skin, I just want to pop it, just get rid of it.
Yeah.
He says, it's like a pimple.
It's embarrassing.
That was so funny. I was like, made me laugh. Okay, so anyway, right? So it says over here, Hamatil maim minat sofim v'difnim, right? If you do right that close that you can see it, lo yeshev upanav klape kodesh. So then don't sit towards the holy, right? So what should you do? Either go towards the north or the south, but don't go towards the holy. Don't go towards the temple. Don't go towards the Temple Mount, whatever, right? The Mikdash. Or Yisalek HaKodesh letzdadim, right? Or right. Okay, so interesting.
I didn't get that.
Okay, let's read it again more time. So again, right? Hamatir mayim minat sofim l'fnim. If you're urinating, right, inside, right, that place, right, where you can see the Temple Mount already,
Okay.
right, in that area, lo yeshev upanav klape kodesh. Don't face the kodesh and right, sit like that.
So only outside, right? Not,
Inside, right? I'm sorry. What do you mean? What do you mean by outside?
I mean, you can see,
Right. So you're inside that area. In other words, you're close, right?
right, but we're talking about you're doing the thing outside, right?
Oh, that's the thing. So he doesn't say anything about that here. Okay, you notice? Okay, so we have to figure out what that means. Okay, so anyway, right? All he tells you is that once you're inside that area, you got a problem already. So what does that mean? Don't go towards the holy. Don't face that way. Don't urinate that way.
So the bathrooms in Tennessee that are close enough inside the house should not be fixed.
That's interesting. But the truth is, we're not really particular about that today. Nobody really knows, can even calculate that. But I'm just looking here at the Taz, right, which is one of the Perushim on the Shulchan Aruch, right? So just trying to see what he's saying here. I'm just looking at the Perushim over here to see what they're saying about this. In other words, the question that I want to answer is, like you guys mentioned, is do we care about the walls or not? That's the question that we have to answer. So here it implies that we don't care about the walls. So what does that mean? It seems to be going like the Rambam, right? So there's a Mishnah Berurah here. Oh. So Mishnah Berurah says the way he paskins is that the wall does make a difference. Right? It does, yeah. But doesn't mean that Maran paskins this way. So we have to see what Maran is saying. That's the question. Right? So by the way, what did he say in before? We had another halakha, right, that talked about this, no? Didn't we see something about this before? In Hay or above, whatever. Just trying to. Right, yeah, it's in Hay. Look at Hay in Shulchan Aruch. Right, so we have to sort this out a little bit here. You see the Hay?
Even the same about the
Oh, there you go. Right. What does it say over here? You see that? Show him where it is. Show to Yitzchak where it is. Got it? So it says, only an open place, he says. There's no walls there. So then you gotta be right towards the south and north. But you cannot do east and west. So there you go, right? So okay, so now we understand. Okay, let's get it straight. If we now see these two Shulchan Aruchs, we understand what's going on. When you're farther away from that, you can't see the Temple Mount. So this is the halacha, what we just read now. Okay? See if hey, this is the halacha. What does that mean? It's only open place.
No matter where you are.
Right, exactly. Only open. Right. Once you get inside, so then it seems like it changes. But the truth is, Mishnah Berurah says even then, if you have a wall, it's okay. So yeah, it's interesting.
So somewhere, but
Yeah,
in some
yeah.
places Rambam, in the other places it's.
That's the question, right? That's the question. Yeah, okay, you know what? Let me look into this, and I'll get back to you guys on this, this issue. What's the story with that? It seems like there's two different dinim, inside and outside.
Mhm.
It's two different things, So the question is there a machloket only, towards the outside, or I'm sorry, yeah, or also on the inside there's machloket? Was there a machloket in the inside? If you, how did you understand? According to what we read. Okay, I have to look into that. Got to analyze it a little bit. Got to look into it. Okay, we'll get back to you on that. We'll get back to you. Got to look at it a little bit. Got to stare at it a little bit, until my, get hypnotized. And then try to figure it out.
What do they do with Israel? Do they care?
I'm sorry.
Do they care?
I'll tell you honestly, any closed bathroom in Israel, nobody cares nothing about these things.
In the
Obviously,
Shivot
you know?
or
Huh?
the-
You know what it is? It's really impossible to be makpid, because there are, lots of dwelling places in the old city, which you can see the Temple Mount from there, like clearly. You know what I mean? And nobody, I don't think anybody, I mean, it's impossible to really be makpid, because like each apartment is in a different direction, like the bathroom, this direction, that direction. Who can it's very hard. You can't control these things. We're talking about like thousands of apartments, and God knows what, and all kinds of things, or hundreds, whatever. Who can watch out for this? So the truth is, that practically speaking, nobody's makpid today about this. But the only way it really should be makpid is when you're open, when you're open place. You know what I mean? That's what you got to really be careful about that. Your question also stands, by the way, remains. I'm not really sure about what the answer is. It says if he's in a walled city. Very interesting question. I don't have a clear answer for that yet. It's a good one. Okay. Hold on to that for a while. We'll see what we can find about that. Okay, good. Baruch Hashem. So let's go on. So it seems like, but as a general rule, we only care about the outside.
yeah, and it's small.
But at the same time, right, in Sif Zayin, the one we just read now, the Shulchan Aruch, it's not much more like that. It's much more that we care about everything. You know what I mean? But let's, you know what? Let's read it again, Sif Zayin. Okay, let's, just read it again. So just make sure we got it.
Shulchan Aruch?
Yeah, Sif Zayin. So let's look at this, right? Hamatil Maim, Sofim Olifnim, right? So if you're urinating within that space, what you can see the temple, right? Lo yeshev upanav klapi hakodesh. Don't sit towards the holy. Right. So yeah, honestly, it seems like he's not going like the Rambam, in a sense, because as we said, right, according to Rambam, the problem is not that you're facing the Kodesh. Other Rabbi, right? The Rambam prefers you should face the Kodesh. Remember we said that? The problem is to turn away from the Kodesh.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like we're not like passing like the Rambam here. We have to look into this a little bit. Okay, gotta look at it. Let's go on. So we'll go to Chet, right? Very interesting. See, when you study, like a lot of things get clarified. A lot of questions come up, so it clarifies things. When you study alone, you can't do this level of learning. Like these questions don't come up, and just like reading it, it doesn't really register much. That's why it's better to have chavruta. The Chazal said, "O chavruta mituta." You know what that means? "O chavruta," or you die. That's it. You're dead. God forbid. One or the other. Okay. So that's the story. Okay, let's go to Chetz. Yeah. So there's a tour over here. Ukeshenifneh. There's a tour. So you guys find that.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah.
So Ukeshenifneh besadeh. If you're going in the field, he says, Imhu achorei gader. Oh, there you go. Right again, same thing. If you're behind the wall, right? Ifneh miyad, you can do right away, no problem. Vik'ah, if you're in the valley. So here he's talking about something else, right? He's talking about privacy, being modest. So what does that mean? If there's partitions, nobody can see you, so go right away. Do what you have to do, because nobody can watch you. That's what he means to say. You're covered.
What would be the difference between the field and valley? They seem to be the same.
Okay. So you know what the valley is? The valley means it's like low down, so people can see you maybe from the top.
Like
That may be the difference.
like
Let's see. Before you ask the question, let's finish the statement. As we said, right? Better to finish the statement before we ask questions. So it says like this, right? So again, right? It says in the valley you got to go further away until they can't see you. In other words, you're not in their field of vision anymore. As we said, right? You see what the problem is? When you're in the valley, they can like look down and see you. So the fence doesn't help you.
Yeah.
That's the problem. You understand?
But in the field, like you just
If it's level, if it's a level field, then you're okay. You know what I mean? Okay, so
By the way, this
yeah.
just want to say like the C finishes where it says the road to
got it. Okay, so right. So it says so what we're saying is basically go so far that they can't see you anymore. They can't see you. Unless they have some binoculars, right? I'm not talking about that. Who wants to watch you anyway, right? Who wants to see you? Okay. So let's look at the Bet Yosef. Yes. So it says Bet Yosef. You got the place?
Yeah.
It says Besof Masechet Brachot. It's over there. End of Masechet Brachot. Amar Ula. It says Samach Bet Amud Aleph. Says Ula Achorei Gader Ifneh Miyad. If you're behind the wall, go right away, no problem. But if you're in the valley, Kozman Shemit Atesh Ve'en Chavero Shomea. Oh, so he says, the problem is that they can hear you. When you're like, passing wind, whatever, all kinds of stuff, and making noise there. So therefore, you have to go further away until they can't hear you anymore. That's how he says. Rashi explains the be'itu shel matakamar. That's talking about passing wind. Isi baranatan matne. This rabbi says something else. Hachi achorei geder achor geder kol zman shenitatesh ben chavero shomea v'ka. So if you're behind the wall, the partition, as long as your friend doesn't hear you, you're okay. You have to be that far away. But when it comes to a valley, kol zman shen chavero ro'o, it has to be for the field of vision. Right? They can't see you anymore. As we said, right, with the valley, there's a problem of seeing you. Right? So they asked a question regarding this in the Gemara. I'm sorry, you say something? You want to say something?
I was just thinking, this is
Okay.
like Hasidut.
I'm sorry.
In the bathroom, so I was hearing you.
But this is just a Gemara, right? We didn't say how we paskin yet. There's different opinions, right? Okay, so we'll see how we paskin, how it comes out the psak. That's an interesting question when you're asking. So anyway, right, as we said, our bathrooms are quite noisy, whatever. Okay, so it's building on that. The isi bar natan with the mashma bevaita. Right. So they asked a question over there. That it's mashma the brighter she'apa pi shechavero ro'el, even though his friend sees him, b'ashad he's still able to do what he has to do. The Shana answers, Rabashi answers, My calls man she'en chavero reo. What does that mean? Doesn't see him. The kamar isi baranatan that this rabbi said calls man she'en chavero et piro'o. He doesn't see actually the excrement, the actual excrement itself. But he can see him. He sees him, but he doesn't see what's coming out of him. That's what it means. Oh, right. So Pasku Rif. So what does the Rif say? Right? How's he paskin? The Rosh and the Rosh, the Bik'ah Kesi Barnatan. So when it comes to the valley, they paskin like this, Rabbi. Right? What does that mean? That they can't see you. Because the Shane Rav Asher, like the Rav Asher answered, calls man shen chavero et chavero. So what does that mean? Doesn't see you? No, doesn't see your excrement. What's coming out of you? Right? Because otherwise, if he can't see you, you have to go like 2 miles down. But God knows how long you have to go. Right? Depending on how good the guy sees. Right? When it comes to behind the fence, right? Paskul keula. The paskul like ula. Mishum demare the Talmud dahu. What he says, right? The ula is mar the Talmud. In other words, he's one of the big shots in the Talmud. One of the big boys there. Right? So we paskul like him. Right? I'm sorry. Ula, yeah. That means like he's a big posek, Tefeb Barnatan. So he was bigger than Isi Barnatan. So what does that mean? Ula is like a Gdolador, Isi Barnatan was not Gdolador, like he was a Rachacham, but not on the same level, Even though Rav Asher, that he's Batra, what does that mean? He was the last rabbi of the Talmud, as we already mentioned, right? He was the one who summed up everything there. Mishana, no. Mishnah Miltevim can Be'afagav the Rav Asher the Batra'ahu Mishana Milte, even though he repeated his words, Rav Asher Ve'im can mashma the Sabra Kivatei. It's mashma that he holds like that. It implies that he holds like this rabbi who's not the big guy, right? So why don't we go like that? The Sabra Kivatei, since he revealed that he holds like him. Paskinan Hachi, we should pass like that. But regarding behind the fence, they didn't mention what the halacha is. Rav Asher didn't mention that. Then we hold like hula. The Gabe Isi Bar Natan. So the rule, right, is like this, right? That Rav Asher is very authoritative. He's like the last rabbi of the Talmud. The final word. So therefore, we do paskin like him. So whenever he did express his opinion, we paskin like him. That's the bottom line. But wherever he did not, so then we're gonna go like Ula and not Isi Bar Natan, right? Because Ula was bigger.
The last in the generation.
I'm sorry?
Because he was the last in the generation.
I'm sorry?
He was the last one.
Who? Rav Asher was the last author of the Talmud. He's the one who put everything together, what I mean? So he made the final, rules. He was the final word there. You know what I mean? Last guy. So that's very important. You know what I mean? That's the like Rabbi Yochanan did Yerushalmi, he's the final word over there. So Rav Asher is the final word over here, that's the way it is. Okay, so guys, I see you guys are getting tired here. So I guess we'll stop here, You want to stop here or should we go on? It's up to you.
So we finish.
You okay? You okay? I'm fine, I'm good. I had a cup of coffee. I'm fine. I'm good. I got no problems. Okay, so let's go on a little bit, right? Maybe we can get to halacha, Rambam perke minchot deot, but it says Rambam, right? Pasak Isi Bar Natan. He passed like Isi. Oh, he didn't go like Ula. Oh my God. Even regarding behind the fence. Mashma desvira, it seems so. Why did he do that? Right? That's the question, right? Why did he go like Isi? Right? The Meachar, the Chazina, the Savar Rav Asher Kivate. Since we see that Rav Asher holds like him in one case, so that means like what? That he holds like him everywhere. So he went the whole thing like Isi. So he preferred Rav Asher. That's the so it says Rabbeinu, the Tur, Katav Kedivri Arif Yarosh. He wrote like the Rif and the Rosh. He didn't pass like the Rambam, right? Which makes sense, right? Because the Rosh was his father. So he's passing like he always goes like his father in general. That's the general rule, right? Like father, like son, as they say, right? That's the way it is. Rabbeinu Yerucham Katav Benitiv Yuginam, and this rabbi wrote, you can do right away when you're behind the wall. By the way, that helps us, in our stalls over here. That means we're good. You know what I mean? We got those stalls. Okay. Thank God for that, for this Gemara. Okay, right? These rabbis. Achorei hagader yifnei miyad. So he says, right, again, behind the wall you can do right away. But when you're in the valley, they can see you, right? By the way, that you know what's in the valley today, what it means. They have cameras in the bathroom, you know, the same thing as the valley. They can see you. You gotta watch out. If they have cameras, you're in the valley. Okay, so okay, so as I said, so there we got, if you know they don't hear him, what comes out of him, or his friend doesn't see it. It's it's just excrement. Adkan. That's the way he says. So he wants to pass like Ula, right? Which is not like the Rambam, right? As we said, the Rambam went like Isi. Okay. Therefore he passed like them also behind the fence. And that which Rabashi, that Rabashi answered, right? Regarding what Rabashi answered regarding the valley, he has his doubt. So we're not sure if he holds like Isi or the Isi Kamar, or just said the words of Isi. But he doesn't hold like that. So it could be that he doesn't hold like that. That's what he's saying. So look what Maran says, right? This is the conclusion. He says, how do we pass in halacha? We go like the Rif and the Rosh, right? We said, right? We always go like 2 out of 3. So here you got 2 out of 3. You got the Rif and you got the Rosh, right? The Habu Tlei the Gabi Rambam. So then therefore we don't go like the Rambam here, right? Which is a different opinion. So we said, right? Rambam passing like Isi, and they went like Rabashe and and Ula, right? That's the idea. Okay. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch. We're done, right? We're off. Okay, we're off. Here we go. So we're doing now, which one? Right? So says Shulchan Aruch, when you're going in the field, if you're behind the wall, right? You can do right away. No problem, right? So we got what to rely on here in the bathrooms. When it comes to the valley, right? You got the cameras there. So then you got to be far enough, they can't see what's coming out of you. If you're that far, you're okay. That's halacha. Chazak Baruch. Laila Tov. So we go like the Rif and the Rosh. Chazak. Thanks for coming, Zoom people. God bless you. See you tomorrow. B'ezrat Hashem, God willing. Tomorrow is the last day of the week. All right.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Hi. Hi, Michael. Michael, nice to see you, Michael.
Good night, Rabbi. God bless you.
God bless you. God bless you. Okay. All right.